In this video, I'll cover teaching the laydown in a way more natural to the horse. I believe there are two types of laydowns. One is used for training and the other as a trick. This method is for teaching it as a trick. I will be putting up a second laydown video in a few weeks to show the process from start to finish with a few horses. The horses in the next video are still learning the laydown, so I'm filming their process currently. But this video is great to show you what to look for while teaching the laydown. There are various ways to teach the laydown as a trick. I used to use a different method I'll briefly explain. I'll use Calypso to demonstrate this method. It's essentially a combination of lifting the front hoof and backing or bending. There's a few ways to bend, either bending the nose to or away from you, and also backing your horse while holding the hoof. I won't go in depth with this method, but it's the first way I began teaching the laydown. Occasionally you could use positive reinforcement to teach your horse to hold or teach certain positions as long as they have a respectful spot to stand when getting the treat. A few horses may get resistant or feel claustrophobic and trapped using this method, as you have to keep holding and waiting for the correct answer. However, this method tends to get the end result, the laydown, taught quicker. The method I'm going to teach you really makes your horse understand the trick and breaks it down into steps instead of just looking for an end result. The end result people always want out of this trick is for their horse to lay down. They want to be able to give a cue and have their horse go down. I look at it a little differently. I want my horse to learn how to lay down and understand it. I want to break it down into steps so I can work on a trick in a session and not have to have my horse lay down 20 times but still improve. So there's different steps I'll work on each session. I think about it like teaching a person a new concept. For them to understand something they've never been told to do before, you have to explain to them how to do it. So I want my horse to have steps for the laydown and kind of make it their own thought to lay down. I've used a few different methods, but lately this has been my favorite. There are ways to easily lay your horse down with ropes or spinning, or even just holding a leg up and backing like I just showed. Some people even wet their horses' backs down to get them to want to roll, like after they would from being bathed or after a ride. But I found with this way, you're teaching them how to lay down, not just to lay down. Anytime I teach something new, I want my horse to start relaxed and focused to the best of their abilities. I teach the laydown by starting against a fence. It gives the horse one less way to give an answer and helps them figure out what I'm asking quicker. After my horse is quiet and calm next to the fence, I begin getting them to soften their neck and head through their halter. Step 1 will be getting your horse to lower their head. You can see how lightly I ask my horse to lower her head in this. She's already learning step 1. I achieve this by releasing for any tiny try they give me when I apply pressure down on their poll. Eventually, I want to work up to barely having to touch my horse and them just lowering their head from my body language or my whip position. Before I move to the next step, they should be able to hold their head low to the ground for at least a few seconds without me having any contact on them. If you're holding a lead rope with a tight grip and trying to pull your horse's head down, stick to this step until your horse is comfortable to relax and understands how to lower his or her head. Before I move to step 2, I'm going to start adding a cue with my whip for my horse to lower her head. I'll start by tapping near her girth area and then asking with my hand for her head to lower, and then when she does, I release with both my hand and my whip. I want to be able to just tap and have her lower her head from that cue, so I'll take a little while to transition it over so I don't have to have my hand on the lead rope at all. Step 1 is the most important step. You always need to end on step 1 unless you fully achieve the laydown. Their head always has to be down and relaxed before you give them a release. The release that I show here, I stand up and fully walk away with my horse and come back to the same position, and I use this not only for teaching the head down, but also for the next 2 steps. It just gives a bit of a bigger release for them to understand and get away from the spot that they've been standing and learning in. I find that it helps them when you're able to give them that bigger release and that little bit of a break. After your horse's head is down and they're soft, you can start asking for step 2, which is moving the hind legs forward. This is where the fence comes in handy because you're going to continue tapping and they might think to move sideways or go forwards, but they'll at least not be able to move sideways away from you with the fence there. This can be confusing for them because right now all they see the tapping as is a cue for head down, but now you're adding on to it and you're asking for more. So the tap should almost feel like a little bit like a fly. So in here, Calliope kicks up at it, moves her leg slightly forward, and I give that a big release. This time you can see her take 2 little steps forward with her hind legs, and that's a big improvement. Any movement from the hind end that's forward, you release for. You can see in Lynx's clip how quick he is to lower his head when I just bend down and raise the whip under his belly. I don't even have to tap, I just hold it there and he takes a step forward. Ideally, I don't even want to touch the horse with the whip, I only tap to accelerate some momentum. At the start, you have to tap to initiate something inside the horse, something that gives them a want to move. The horse doesn't need to bring their hind legs super close to the front legs, but just enough so that they're under themselves. This is probably the hardest step to teach because you have to reward the slight tries for them to understand that the tapping means bring the hind legs forward, not bring them up in place or bring them up and back or move their hip. They have to understand that you want them to get under themselves and keep their head down. You can see here that Calliope brings her hind legs forward, but her head comes up and has a little bit of tension. So I ask for her to lower her head again, and then I quit from the exercise. So I always end with step 1. Lynx offers me a little bit more in this last clip. He actually pops his front knee out, which is part of step 3. Step 3 is lifting up or popping the front legs. You don't have to start this on the rail, I just started it on the rail because that's where I was. And I'll just tap somewhere behind the knee until they lift up their leg and then I release. And I do this with their head up at the start, that way they don't have to put everything together all at once, that they'll kind of have the cue that the tapping on their leg is for them to lift up their front legs or pop their front legs. And I always stay on the same side for the laydown. So in this case, I'm always on the left side of my horse. So when I'm asking the right leg to come up, I have to be reaching behind the left front leg to tap the right front leg. And she's kind of stomping her left front, but I'm asking for her right, so I'm just gonna wait until she picks up her right. So Lynx is picking up his hoof pretty nicely in this. And all I'm asking for is that left front just to lift up. And right there, all he does is pop it, and that's perfect. I don't need it to come fully up, because all they're going to be able to do when they're down and in that position is unlock their knee just like that. So now I'm going to reach behind and ask for the other front leg to lift up. And I do this because they need to be able to bend both front legs. You can't just ask with one. I'll show the whip position from behind. So I'm tapping just on like the side or behind the knee. So now I reach across, and I'll alternate which I do when they're down, when they're learning this step. So now when they're down, what I can do is keep the pressure on both of the legs by starting with the closest to me and then bending to the further away one. That way they pop both knees at once. When I start to ask for this in conjunction with the head down and bringing the back feet in, I ask on the rail. So Calliope here puts her head down, brings her back feet in, and lifts her front leg, but then brings her head up some, so I just ask for it to come down again, and then I give her that big release. So she kind of struggles with keeping her head down when I ask her to lift her front leg, so that's kind of where she's at with her lay down right now, is we're just working on that, getting her more comfortable with staying down as she lifts her front leg. So Lynx gets right into the position, and he kind of pops his more than he does lift it, which is perfect, and his head stays down. So what I'm looking for is them to initiate that, and as soon as you think they're actually going to go down, don't continue doing this exercise on the fence. Then you can bring them off the fence and ask them to lay down, because you don't want them to lay down in the fence and get stuck. And once they actually do go down, you can ask them to do different things like go flat, but if their initial reaction is to go down and roll, that's also perfect. You can let them stay down for as long as they want or as little as they want at the start. And as soon as they get up, you reward them. It doesn't matter if they go down and get right back up, because you're going to ask them to go right back into the lay down and not fully complete the lay down, but complete the first 2 or 3 steps. That way they can end by setting up for the lay down, but they don't have to fully go down again. But always reward for any attempt at them laying down. This method teaches the horse how they would naturally go down. If you see a horse out in the paddock, what do they do first? They drop their nose into the ground. Sometimes they start spinning or moving around to find the right spot, and then they gather their legs underneath them and then bend their front legs and they go down. So I'm trying to replicate a natural way that a horse would lay down. My lay down method is very similar to Ariana's, and I had the chance to work with her this summer and use some of her techniques to improve my method. The horses I'm using in this video have a little bit of lay down knowledge, so it's really to show you what you're going to be looking for, whereas in part 2 I'll be showing from start to finish.